The stars had always been silent. For thousands of years, humanity looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. They built telescopes and sent radio signals into the void. They dreamed of finding others like themselves among the distant lights. Then, 62 years ago, they got their answer. The first contact was not gentle. A Valorian scout ship appeared in Earth's orbit without warning. It hung there for 3 days, watching, scanning, and studying the small blue planet below. When it finally made contact, the message was simple. You are not alone. Prepare yourselves. Humanity did prepare. They learned that the galaxy was old and full of life. Thousands of species had risen and fallen across millions of years. Great empires controlled vast stretches of space. And among them, the Valorian hegemony stood as one of the mightiest powers in the Orion Arm. The Valorians gave humanity the gift of faster-than-light travel. It was not done out of kindness. The hegemony had a practice of uplifting young species, teaching them just enough to be useful, and then absorbing them into their empire as servant races. They called it guidance. Other species called it conquest with extra steps, but humanity proved to be different. They took the technology and ran with it. Within 6 decades, they had colonized 14 star systems. They built stations and cities on distant worlds. They created their own government, the Terran Union, and declared themselves a free people of the galaxy. The Valorians watched with growing annoyance. This was not how things were supposed to work. Now, on a cold steel station floating at the edge of human space, the moment of reckoning had arrived. Galactic Concord Station was a place of diplomacy and power. It hung in the darkness between stars, a massive structure built by species long since forgotten. Here, representatives from across the galaxy came to make deals, forge alliances, and sometimes deliver threats wrapped in polite words. Director Yuki Tanaka stood at the observation window of the Terran delegation quarters. She was a small woman with silver-streaked black hair and eyes that missed nothing. At 58 years old, she had served the Terran Union for over 3 decades. She had negotiated trade agreements, resolved border disputes, and talked her way out of more than a few dangerous situations. But she had never faced anything like this. Behind her, her aide, Commander Marcus Webb, reviewed the latest intelligence reports on his datapad. He was a tall man with dark skin and a soldier's bearing. Before joining the diplomatic corps, he had served 15 years in the Terran Navy. He still carried himself like a man ready for a fight. The Valorian delegation has arrived, he said. Ambassador Cathvoran is leading them personally. Tanaka did not turn from the window. How many ships? 12. All heavy cruisers. They brought their honor guard as well. About 200 soldiers. A show of force. They want us to know they mean business. Tanaka finally turned. Her face was calm, almost peaceful. They want us to be afraid. Webb looked at her. He had served with Tanaka for 5 years, and he still could not always read her. She had a way of staying calm when everyone else was panicking. It was either very reassuring or very unsettling, depending on the situation. Are we afraid? He asked. Tanaka smiled. It was a small smile, the kind that suggested she knew something others did not. No, Commander. We are not. The meeting chamber was a grand circular room with walls of polished black stone. Floating light orbs drifted near the ceiling, casting soft illumination over the assembled delegates. The Valorian delegation occupied one side of the room, their tall insectoid forms arranged in perfect military formation. Ambassador Cathvoran stood at their center. He was impressive by any standard. Nearly 3 meters tall, his body was covered in a gleaming carapace of deep blue and green. His forearms were folded across his chest in a posture that conveyed both authority and contempt. 2 large compound eyes studied the human delegation with cold calculation. The Valorians were an ancient race. They had conquered their first star system when humanity was still learning to make fire. They had built an empire spanning over 800 worlds. They had crushed rebellions, absorbed younger species, and eliminated threats without mercy. To them, humanity was a minor annoyance, a problem to be solved. Tanaka entered the chamber with only Commander Webb at her side. She wore the simple gray uniform of the Terran diplomatic service. No medals, no decorations, nothing to suggest power or importance. Next to the towering, armored Valorians, she looked almost fragile. Kethvorin's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. His translator device converted the sound into words. Director Tanaka, how kind of you to come personally. I had expected your government to send someone of greater stature. I speak with the full authority of the Terran Union, Tanaka replied. Her voice was steady and clear. Whatever you have to say, you may say to me. Very well. Kethvorin gestured, and one of his aides stepped forward with a data crystal. This contains the terms of integration. Your species will become a protectorate of the Valorian hegemony. You will provide resources, labor, and military support as required. In exchange, you will receive our protection and guidance. Webb's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Tanaka took the crystal and examined it briefly before placing it in her pocket. And if we decline? She asked. Kethvorin leaned forward slightly. His compound eyes seemed to glow in the soft light. Director, let us not play games. Your species controls 14 systems. We control over 800. Your largest warship is barely 300 meters long. Ours are measured in kilometers. You have no allies, no fleet, and no hope of standing against us. He paused, letting the words sink in. If you decline, we will be forced to pursue realignment. Your worlds will be occupied. Your leaders will be replaced. Your people will serve the hegemony, whether they wish to or not. The only question is how much suffering you wish to endure before accepting the inevitable. The chamber fell silent. The Valorian soldiers stood like statues, their weapons ready. The message was clear. This was not a negotiation. It was a surrender demand. Tanaka stood very still for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. I understand your position, Ambassador. You have made it very clear. Kethvorin's mandibles clicked again. Then you accept. I did not say that. The ambassador's posture shifted slightly. It was the first sign of uncertainty he had shown. Director, I advise you to consider carefully. Pride is a luxury you cannot afford. I am not speaking from pride, Tanaka said. I am speaking from authority. The Terran Union does not accept ultimatums. We do not surrender our freedom, and we do not bow to threats. Kethvorin's voice hardened. Then you choose destruction. I choose nothing yet. Tanaka took a step forward. Despite the vast difference in their sizes, she met the ambassador's gaze without flinching. The Galactic Concord has laws, does it not? Any species may address the full assembly before matters of war are decided. That right is reserved for sovereign powers. And we are a sovereign power. We have not joined your hegemony. We have not submitted to anyone. By Concord law, we have the right to speak. Kethvorin was silent for several seconds. His compound eyes moved slightly, processing this unexpected development. The human was correct. The old laws of the Concord did grant speaking rights to any independent species. It was a formality, usually ignored, but it was still on the books. You wish to address the assembly? He asked. I do. In 3 cycles, the full assembly will convene for the seasonal gathering. We will present our response then. All delegations are invited to attend. This is a delay tactic. This is our right. Tanaka's voice remained calm. Unless the hegemony wishes to violate Concord law in front of the entire galaxy, The challenge hung in the air. Kefvarn knew that refusing would make the hegemony look like bullies and lawbreakers. The other powers of the galaxy were always watching for signs of weakness or overreach. A violation of Concord law could shift alliances and create new enemies. Finally, he made a sound that the translator rendered as a sigh. "Very well, Director. You shall have your 3 cycles. Present whatever speech you wish to the Assembly. It will not change the outcome. We shall see." "Yes, we shall." Kefvarn turned to leave, then paused. "I will give you one piece of advice, human. When you stand before the Assembly, do not embarrass yourselves. Accept your fate with dignity. History remembers those who know when to surrender." Tanaka watched him go. Only when the Valorian delegation had left the chamber did she allow herself a small breath. Webb stepped closer. "Director, what just happened? We bought ourselves 3 days. That's not enough time to build a fleet or find allies." Tanaka looked at him. That small, knowing smile returned to her face. "Commander, who said anything about building a fleet?" "I don't understand." "You will." She pulled out her personal comm device and entered a secure code. The connection took only seconds to establish. On the other end, a voice answered. "Admiral Chun here." "Admiral, this is Director Tanaka. We have 3 cycles. Is Prometheus ready?" There was a pause. When Chun spoke again, there was something in his voice that might have been anticipation. "She's been ready for 20 years, Director. We've just been waiting for the right moment. The moment has arrived. Prepare for full deployment. I want every ship in position before the Assembly convenes." "Understood." "And Director? It's going to be one hell of a show." The connection ended. Webb stared at Tanaka with confusion and the beginnings of hope. "Director, what is Prometheus?" Tanaka began walking toward the door. "It's humanity's answer, Commander. 60 years of work, hidden in the darkest corners of space where no one thought to look. The Valorians believe we have nothing. They think we spent the last 6 decades building colonies and playing at civilization." She stopped and turned to face him. They were wrong. In the days that followed, the station buzzed with rumors and speculation. Word spread quickly through the diplomatic quarters that humanity had demanded an assembly hearing. Most species found this amusing. The tiny human faction, barely old enough to have earned their place among the stars, was going to make some kind of stand. Betting pools opened among the younger diplomats. How long would the humans speak before surrendering? Would they cry? Would they try to fight and be destroyed immediately? The odds were not in humanity's favor. Ambassador Kefvarn received regular reports from Hegemony Intelligence. They showed nothing unusual. Human space remained quiet. Their small patrol ships continued their normal routes. There was no sign of military buildup, no frantic communications, no indication that anything had changed. "They are in denial," Kefvarn told his staff. "It is common among primitive species. They cannot accept the reality of their situation, so they pretend it is not happening. In 3 cycles, they will stand before the Assembly, make some passionate speech about freedom and dignity, and then they will surrender." His second sub-ambassador Verith was less certain. The human director did not seem afraid. She seemed prepared. She was performing. Humans are emotional creatures. They believe that showing strength will somehow change their circumstances. It will not. And if they refuse to surrender even after the assembly, Kefvarn's mandibles clicked sharply. Then we will make an example of them. Their worlds will burn. Their species will serve us in chains. And every young race in the galaxy will learn what happens to those who defy the hegemony. Vareth nodded, but the unease did not leave his eyes. Something about the human director's calm confidence bothered him. It was not the desperation of the doomed. It was the patience of someone who was waiting. But for what? On the other side of the station, in the modest quarters assigned to the Terran delegation, Director Tanaka was reviewing files on her secure terminal. Commander Webb sat across from her, reading the same documents with growing amazement. "This is real?" he asked. "All of this?" "Every word. But how? The resources alone would be impossible to hide. The hegemony has spies everywhere. They monitor our shipyards, our communications, everything." Tanaka leaned back in her chair. "They monitor what we let them see. From the very beginning, from the moment we received FTL technology, we knew this day would come. The hegemony does not give gifts. They make investments. They expected us to be grateful servants, too weak and dependent to ever challenge them. But we weren't. No, we weren't." Tanaka called up a star chart on her display. "There are regions of space that the major powers ignore. Dead systems with no valuable resources. Empty voids between the spiral arms. Places where no one goes because there is nothing there." She zoomed in on one such region. It appeared completely empty. "That is where we built our future." Webb stared at the display. "Hidden shipyards. Secret fleets. All this time. Every colony we established was chosen not just for resources, but for secrecy. Every trade agreement was designed to fund projects that officially did not exist. And every piece of intelligence that leaked to the hegemony was information we wanted them to have. We played them. We survived. There's a difference." Tanaka closed the display. "Now, in 3 cycles, we show them who we really are. And the galaxy will never look at humanity the same way again." Webb sat in silence for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. "What happens if it's not enough? What if even with everything we've built, they're still stronger?" Tanaka considered the question. "Then we fight anyway. We fight and we lose and we die free. That is the human way, Commander. We do not surrender. We do not kneel. We stand, even when standing seems impossible." She met his eyes. "But I do not think we will lose. I think when that ship enters the field, the Valorians will finally understand what they have been dealing with all these years. They will see what humans can do when our survival is at stake." "And what is that?" Tanaka smiled. This time, it was not a small, knowing smile. It was something fiercer. Something proud. "Miracles, Commander. We work miracles." Outside the station, the stars continued their eternal watch. Somewhere in the darkness, unseen and unknown, a fleet was gathering. Ships that had never been registered in any database. Crews that had trained in secret for decades. And at their center, something vast and terrible and beautiful. Prometheus was waking up. And soon, the galaxy would tremble. The news traveled faster than light itself. Within hours of the confrontation between Ambassador Kethvorn and Director Tanaka, every major intelligence service in the galaxy knew what had happened. The humans had refused to submit. They had demanded a hearing before the full assembly. And they had done so without any visible fear. It was this last detail that troubled the analysts most. On Valoria Prime, the heart of the hegemony, intelligence officers gathered in their underground command center. Massive screens displayed everything they knew about humanity. Star charts, fleet compositions, industrial output, population data. All of it painted a picture of a young, weak species that had no business challenging a galactic power. Senior analyst Korath stood before the main display, his forearms moving rapidly as he cycled through data streams. He was one of the hegemony's best minds, responsible for tracking dozens of emerging species. Humanity had been his assignment for the last 30 years. "The analysis is complete," he announced to the assembled officers. "Human military capacity remains minimal. Their known fleet consists of approximately 40 patrol vessels, none exceeding 300 meters in length. Their shipyards are designed for civilian construction. They have no orbital defense platforms capable of stopping a determined assault. Fleet Commander Zethral, a scarred veteran of 100 campaigns, studied the display with skepticism. Then, why did their representative show no fear? The human female should have been trembling before the ambassador. Humans are emotional creatures, another officer suggested. Perhaps she was simply too proud to show weakness. Pride does not change reality. The weak know when they are weak. Even if they refuse to admit it openly, their behavior betrays them. This one showed nothing. No trembling, no sweating, no elevated heart rate. Our sensors confirmed she was completely calm. Korath brought up additional data. There are some irregularities in our intelligence picture. Minor gaps that have accumulated over the years. What kind of gaps? Missing data. Sectors of human space that we have not been able to survey properly. Our drones report system errors when they enter certain regions. Our informants occasionally reference projects or locations that do not appear in any official records. Zethro leaned forward. Are you suggesting the humans have been hiding something? I am suggesting that we may not know everything. The gaps are small, individually insignificant. But taken together, they form a pattern of deliberate concealment. That would require resources they do not have. Building secret facilities, maintaining hidden projects, all while our surveillance systems watch their every move. Impossible. Korath hesitated. Perhaps. But there is one other detail that concerns me. It brought up a new file. It contained fragments of intercepted communications, partial data from captured devices, and reports from various informants. All of it centered on a single word. Prometheus, Zethral read. What is this? We do not know. The name appears in scattered references going back decades. It is never explained, never detailed. Our translators suggest it refers to an ancient human myth, a figure who stole fire from the gods and gave it to mortals. A myth? They named a secret project after a myth? Humans often do this. But the frequency of references has been increasing. And 2 years ago, one of our deep cover agents reported something strange before we lost contact with him. Lost contact? He disappeared. His last message mentioned Prometheus. He said he had found it. He said we had made a terrible mistake. The chamber fell silent. Zethral stared at the display for a long moment. You think the humans are building something. I think we should consider the possibility. Based on a myth, some missing data, and one dead spy? Korath's compound eyes met the commander's gaze. Based on the fact that their representative smiled when Ambassador Kethforan threatened to destroy her entire species. That is not the smile of the desperate. That is the smile of someone who knows something we do not. The meeting ended without resolution. Zethral ordered increased surveillance of human space, but he remained unconvinced. The humans were clever, he admitted, but they were not clever enough to hide an entire military program from the greatest intelligence service in the galaxy. Or so he believed. The Valorians were not the only ones paying attention. Across the galaxy, in stations and ships and hidden listening posts, other species were analyzing the same information. The Galactic Concord was a web of alliances and rivalries, and any shift in power affected everyone. The Core 3 Collective, a federation of synthetic beings, ran probability calculations in their distributed network minds. They had no love for the hegemony, which viewed artificial life as an abomination. If the humans could somehow weaken Valorian power, it might create opportunities. Analysis suggests human survival probability at 2.3%, one of their network nodes reported. However, the behavioral data is anomalous. The human representative's confidence does not match their apparent military situation. Possibility of bluff, another node responded. Evaluated. Human psychology does not support this interpretation. Their cultural patterns show that they bluff poorly. When humans pretend to be stronger than they are, physiological indicators appear. Director Tanaka showed none. Alternative explanations? Unknown factor present. Something we have not accounted for. The collective decided to observe carefully and prepare contingencies for multiple outcomes. The Rithani Consortium, the trading empire of reptilian merchants, was more direct in their approach. Their ambassador, a cunning female named Celestia, requested a private meeting with Director Tanaka. They met in a small chamber off the main diplomatic hall. Celestia was covered in golden scales that shifted color with her mood. Right now, they were a deep, curious orange. "You interest me, Director," she said, her forked tongue tasting the air. "The hegemony has crushed species far more powerful than yours. Yet you stand before them and refuse to yield. Is that so strange? It is unprecedented. In 4,000 years of Valorian expansion, no species at your level of development has ever refused integration. They all saw the mathematics. They all understood the hopelessness of resistance." Tanaka poured herself a cup of water from the table between them. Perhaps they lacked imagination. Celestia's scales shifted to a brighter orange. "I think you know something. I think you have a secret. And I would very much like to know what it is. Would you? The consortium has no love for the hegemony. They tax our trade routes and interfere with our business. If there were a way to adjust the balance of power, we would be interested in supporting it. With ships? With resources, credits, information. We are merchants, Director. We do not fight wars, but we do make investments." Tanaka considered this. "And what would you want in return?" "Favorable trade agreements with Terran space. Access to your markets. Perhaps some exclusive contracts. You want to profit from our survival. We want to profit from everything. It is our nature." Celestia leaned forward. "But I cannot invest in something I do not understand. Tell me what you are planning. Show me that you have a chance, and I will commit consortium resources to your cause." Tanaka was silent for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Ambassador Celestia, I appreciate your interest, but I cannot reveal our plans to anyone. Not because I do not trust you, but because secrecy is the foundation of everything we have built. Then you do have something." "I did not say that. You did not need to. Your refusal confirms it." Celestia's scales turned a satisfied green. "Very well, Director. Keep your secrets. But know this. When the assembly convenes and your plan is revealed, the consortium will be watching. And if you succeed, we will be the first to offer our friendship. And if we fail, then we will express appropriate regret and continue trading with the hegemony as before. We are pragmatic creatures, Director. Surely you understand." "I do." Celestia rose to leave, then paused at the door. "One more thing. The hegemony is not as confident as they pretend. Their intelligence services are scrambling to understand why you are not afraid. They have detected gaps in their surveillance. They know something is wrong, even if they cannot admit it. Thank you for the information. Consider it a free sample. When this is over, you will owe me a full trade negotiation." She left, and Tanaka sat alone in the quiet chamber. The game was becoming more complex. Soon, it would not be possible to hide anything anymore. That was fine. The time for hiding was almost overdone in the depths of human space, far from any known shipping lanes. The true nature of humanity's secret was taking shape. The Prometheus. Yards occupied a region of space that did not officially exist. It appeared on no star charts. No commercial vessels had ever passed through. The only way to find it was to already know where it was. Admiral James Chun stood on the observation deck of the command station, looking out at the greatest project in human history. He was an older man with iron gray hair and the kind of face that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. He had served in the Terran Navy since its founding. He had watched humanity grow from a single world to 14 systems. And for the last 20 years, he had commanded the most important secret in the galaxy. Below him, in the endless darkness of space, the ships were gathering. The Prometheus herself dominated the view. 23 kilometers of armored hull, bristling with weapons that had never been tested in combat. Her construction had taken 40 years, beginning when humanity first realized that the hegemony would eventually come for them. She was not just a ship. She was a statement. Around her, the rest of the fleet was assembling. 12 Colossus-class carriers, each one 5 kilometers long, capable of deploying hundreds of fighters. 40 Warden-class battlecruisers, the backbone of any serious naval force. Over 200 support vessels, from destroyers to supply ships to electronic warfare platforms. A fleet that no one knew existed. Captain Sarah Rodriguez entered the observation deck and stood beside Chun. She was his second in command. A brilliant tactician who had spent her entire career preparing for a war that most people did not believe was possible. Final assembly is complete, Admiral. All ships report ready for deployment. Crew status? Full combat readiness. They have been waiting for this moment their entire lives. Chun nodded slowly. So have I. When I was a young officer, I watched the Valorians take the Mandari system. A peaceful species, artists and philosophers. They refused integration. The hegemony burned their homeworld to ash. 17 billion dead in a single day. I remember reading about it. Reading about it does not capture what it was like. The broadcasts, the screams, and then the silence. Just silence from a world that had been alive for millions of years. Chun's hands tightened on the railing. I swore that day that humanity would never suffer the same fate. That we would find a way to survive, no matter what it took. And we did. He turned to face her. But survival is not the same as victory. When we enter that field, when the hegemony sees what we have built, everything changes. Either we convince them that war would cost too much, or we fight the most powerful empire in the Orion Arm. Rodriguez met his gaze. We are ready to fight, Admiral. Every person in this fleet knows what is at stake. They would rather die free than live as slaves. I know. I chose them for that quality. Chun looked back at the Prometheus. But I do not want them to die. I want them to live. I want humanity to take its place among the powers of the galaxy, not as servants, but as equals. Then we make them believe. We show them that the cost of subjugating humanity is higher than the cost of leaving us alone. That is the plan. Chun smiled slightly. Director Tanaka always said that diplomacy is just war with better manners. I suppose we are about to test that theory. A communication alert chimed. Rodriguez checked her device. Admiral, message from Director Tanaka. She confirms the timeline. We are to deploy in 48 hours. Understood. Begin final preparations. All ships to departure stations. Yes, sir. She left, and Chun stood alone on the observation deck. The fleet stretched out before him, dark and silent and waiting. Soon, they would light their engines and cross the galaxy. Soon, they would announce themselves to a universe that had underestimated them for 60 years. The Valorians believed they were dealing with primitives. They believed humanity had nothing but pride and empty words. They were about to learn otherwise. Back on Concord Station, the atmosphere was changing. As the final hours before the assembly approached, the diplomatic quarters filled with tension and speculation. Delegations from dozens of species gathered in common areas, exchanging rumors and theories. The The human situation was the topic of every conversation. "They will surrender," a Valorian official declared confidently. The speech will be dramatic, full of human emotion, but in the end, they will accept reality. "I am not so sure," a Corthary observer replied. "Our analysis suggests hidden factors. Something does not fit." "Your analysis is flawed. The humans have nothing. Our intelligence is comprehensive." "Is it?" "Then explain the gaps." "What gaps?" "The regions of human space that your drones cannot enter. The projects that your informants cannot find. The agent who disappeared after mentioning something called Prometheus." The Valorian officer's mandibles clicked with irritation. "Minor anomalies. Every intelligence operation has gaps. It does not mean the humans are hiding a secret fleet. It does not mean they are not." Across the station, similar conversations were happening. The galaxy was divided between those who expected a quick human surrender and those who sensed something more complicated. Director Tanaka remained in her quarters, preparing her speech. Commander Webb brought her regular updates on the fleet's progress. Everything was proceeding on schedule. "Director," Webb said during one briefing, "the consortium ambassador has been spreading rumors. She is telling everyone that we have a secret, that we are planning something unexpected. Good, good, good. She's raising expectations. If we do not deliver something dramatic, we will look like fools." Tanaka looked up from her work. "Commander, in 12 hours, we are going to reveal the largest secret military buildup in galactic history. I think we can meet expectations." Webb paused. "Fair point. The more uncertainty we create now, the better. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. When the truth is revealed, the shock will be even greater. And if the hegemony decides to attack before the assembly, if they decide not to take any chances, they will not. Ambassador Kefauren is too proud. He wants to humiliate us in front of the entire galaxy. He wants to watch us beg for mercy before his peers. An attack before the assembly would deny him that pleasure. You are gambling on his pride. I am gambling on his arrogance. It is a safe bet. The Valorians have been the dominant power in this region for thousands of years. They have never faced a true challenge. They cannot even imagine that a species like ours could threaten them." Webb nodded slowly. "And after the assembly? After they see what we have? Then we will see what they are truly made of. Either they will recognize that destroying us would cost too much, or they will decide that their pride is worth any price." Tanaka's expression hardened. "If they choose war, we will give them one they will never forget. Can we win? Honestly, I do not know. The Prometheus is powerful, but the hegemony controls 800 systems. They can replace any losses we inflict. In a long war, they would eventually overwhelm us. Then, what is the point? The point is that we are not trying to destroy them. We are trying to make them understand that destroying us would be too expensive. Every ship they lose, every system we threaten, every year the war drags on costs them resources and prestige. Their other rivals will see weakness. Their subject species will see opportunity. The hegemony maintains power through the perception of invincibility. If we crack that perception, even slightly, everything changes." Webb sat in silence, processing this. Finally, he spoke. "Director, I have to admit something. When you first told me about Prometheus, I did not believe it. It seemed impossible. How could we hide something so massive for so long? We had help. Help?" Tanaka smiled. "Not every species in the galaxy loves the hegemony. Some of them remember what it was like to be free. Some of them still dream of a galaxy where the strong do not simply devour the weak. They could not act openly, but they could look the other way. They could lose certain reports. They could provide certain materials without asking too many questions. We have secret allies. We have species who want the same thing we want. Whether they become true allies will depend on what happens next. The hours passed. The fleet moved through hyperspace, crossing distances that would have taken centuries at slower speeds. On Concord Station, the delegations prepared for what everyone expected to be a historic moment. Only a few knew just how historic it would be. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, a ship the size of a mountain continued its journey toward destiny. Prometheus was coming, and nothing would ever be the same. Then we attack, Zethral said. We destroy them now, before they can build more. And what would that cost us? Zethral paused. The cost is irrelevant. They have challenged us. They must be punished. The cost is never irrelevant. The Chancellor's voice was cold. How many ships would we lose? How long would the campaign take? And while our fleets were occupied crushing humanity, what would our other rivals be doing? They would not dare. They would dare exactly as much as they thought they could get away with. The Korthari have been waiting for a weakness to exploit. The Rithani would immediately begin funding resistance movements in our outer territories. Even our subject species would start wondering if the hegemony is as invincible as we claim. The chamber was silent. The humans have done something clever, the Chancellor continued. They have created a situation where attacking them hurts us more than leaving them alone. If we destroy them, we prove that we can be defied. If we let them stand, we prove that we can be reasoned with. Either way, our reputation suffers. So we do nothing? We do something far more difficult. We adapt. The Chancellor rose from his seat. The humans will be treated as equals. We will withdraw the integration demand and pursue diplomatic relations instead. We will publicly acknowledge that they have earned their place among the powers of the galaxy. Kethvorn's mandibles clicked with disbelief. Chancellor, this is unprecedented. We have never faced a situation like this. Unprecedented situations require unprecedented responses. The Chancellor looked around the chamber. Make no mistake, I am not happy about this. The humans have embarrassed us. They have exposed weaknesses in our intelligence and our assumptions. There will be consequences for those failures. Several officers shifted uncomfortably. But the survival of the hegemony is more important than our pride. We will accept reality, as we have always done, and we will begin quietly preparing for the future. The humans have shown us that the galaxy is changing. We must change with it or be swept away. The decision was made. The hegemony would not go to war. Back at Concord Station, the diplomatic situation was evolving rapidly. Ambassador Celestia of the Rithani Consortium was the first to officially approach the Terran delegation. She found Director Tanaka in the observation lounge, watching the Prometheus through the transparent walls. Director, I must admit, I am impressed. Tanaka turned to face her. Ambassador, I was wondering when you would appear. I told you I would be watching. I did not expect such a spectacular performance. Celestia's scales shifted to an admiring purple. The consortium is prepared to open immediate trade negotiations. We believe a partnership with humanity could be extremely profitable for both parties. How quickly things change. An hour ago, you were offering support that might not materialize. An hour ago, you were an unknown quantity. Now you are a proven power. Celestia smiled, showing sharp teeth. The consortium adapts to new realities. It is how we survive. And the hegemony? Are they adapting as well? They are in crisis. Our sources indicate that the Council is in emergency session. There is talk of war, but cooler heads seem to be prevailing. Tanaka nodded. Good. We do not want war. We want to be left alone to build our civilization in peace. Peace is profitable. The consortium approves. Celestia moved closer. But I must ask, Director, how did you do it? 60 years of deception, right under the hegemony sensors. It should have been impossible. Should it? Tanaka's expression gave nothing away. The hegemony believed we were primitives who could never threaten them. That belief made them careless. They saw what they expected to see, and they never looked deeper. But the resources, the materials, you could not have built all of this with just what you produced yourselves. No, we had help. From who? Tanaka smiled. Ambassador, I will share many things with the consortium. That is not one of them. Celestia's scales turned a thoughtful blue. Fair enough. Every power has its secrets. But I hope you understand that the consortium's interest in humanity is not purely commercial. You have upset the balance of power in this region. Many species will be watching to see what you do next. We will try not to disappoint them. See that you do not. Celestia bowed. I look forward to a long and profitable relationship, Director. She left, and Tanaka was alone again with the view of her ship. The Prometheus hung in space like a guardian angel, silent and patient and waiting. Her presence changed everything. As long as she existed, humanity could not be ignored or dismissed or threatened into submission. Commander Webb entered the lounge. Director, Admiral Chun is requesting a private channel. He says it is important. Tanaka nodded and activated the communication console. Chun's face appeared on the screen. Admiral, congratulations on a successful deployment. Thank you, Director. But I have news that you need to hear. Go ahead. Chun's expression was serious. Our long-range sensors have detected Valorian fleet movements. Multiple battle groups are being recalled from the outer territories and consolidated at staging areas near their core worlds. Are they preparing to attack? I do not believe so. The movements are defensive in nature. They are pulling back to protect their most important systems, not positioning for an assault on human space. Tanaka considered this. They are scared. More than scared. They are genuinely uncertain. For the first time in thousands of years, the hegemony is facing an enemy they are not sure they can defeat. Chun paused. But, Director, there is something else. Something that concerns me more. What is it? The Prometheus has been scanning the Valorian vessels since we arrived. We have gathered a significant amount of data on their technology and capabilities. That is good, surely. It is, but the data also reveals something unexpected. The Valorian ships are old. Most of them are centuries old, using designs that have not changed significantly since before humanity achieved spaceflight. They have not needed to innovate. They have been the dominant power for so long that no one challenged them. Exactly. And that means they are vulnerable. Not just to us, but to anyone willing to push back against them. The Prometheus is not the only ship the galaxy could build. Other species could do what we did, if they had the will and the resources. Tanaka understood what he was saying. You are worried that we have started something we cannot stop. I am worried that we have started something no one can stop. The galaxy has been stable for a long time, with the hegemony maintaining order through fear. We have broken that fear. Now every species that ever resented Valorian control will be thinking the same thought. If the humans can do it, why not us? That was always the risk. Yes, but seeing it become real is different from discussing it in theory. Chun's face was troubled. Director, I am proud of what we have accomplished. I believe we did the right thing. But I also know that the future we have created will be more dangerous, more chaotic, and more uncertain than anything that came before. Tanaka was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. Admiral, humanity has never been afraid of uncertainty. We have never been afraid of danger. We have faced every challenge the universe threw at us and found a way to survive. And if this challenge is too great, then we will face it together. Not just humanity, but every species that believes in freedom. Every civilization that refuses to kneel. Tanaka's voice was firm. We did not build the Prometheus just for ourselves. We built her as a symbol, a promise that the galaxy does not have to be ruled by fear. Chum nodded slowly. I hope you are right, Director. So do I, Admiral. So do I. The communication ended, and Tanaka stood alone in the observation lounge. Outside, the Prometheus continued her silent vigil. The stars burned in the endless darkness, ancient and unchanging. But for humanity, for the galaxy, everything had changed. The old order was ending. The hegemony's grip on power was weakening. And in the chaos that would follow, anything was possible. Humanity had taken its first step onto the galactic stage. Now, they would see where that step led them. The grand chamber of the Galactic Concord had stood for over 50,000 years. Its builders were long gone, vanished into the mists of history like so many species before them. But their creation remained, a monument to ambition and unity that had outlasted empires. The chamber was carved from a single asteroid, hollowed out and shaped into a perfect amphitheater that could hold representatives from every known civilization today. It was full. Thousands of delegates filled the tiered seats, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Some were massive, requiring special platforms to support their weight. Others were tiny, sitting in clusters of dozens on single chairs. Energy beings floated in containment fields. Aquatic species swam in transparent tanks. Hive minds communicated through millions of tiny bodies that moved as one. This was the Galactic Concord in its full glory. 2,000 species, representing trillions of beings across countless worlds. They came together 4 times each cycle to discuss matters of shared importance. Trade agreements, territorial disputes, scientific discoveries, and the never-ending dance of power that defined galactic civilization. But today, everyone knew, was different. Today, humanity would answer the Valorian ultimatum. Director Yuki Tanaka stood in the preparation chamber below the main floor. She was dressed in the formal uniform of the Terran Union, a simple gray suit with the Earth insignia on her collar. No medals, no decorations, nothing to distract from the words she was about to speak. Commander Webb entered and handed her a datapad. Final confirmation from Admiral Chun. The fleet is in position. They will arrive on your signal. Tanaka took the pad and read the message. 3 words. Ready when you are. She smiled and tucked the pad into her pocket. How does the chamber look? Packed. Every seat is filled. There are delegations here that have not attended an assembly in centuries. Everyone wants to see what happens. And the Valorians? Front row, center section. Ambassador Kethvoren brought his entire staff. They also positioned their escort fleet in formation outside the station, visible from the main display. A reminder of what we are supposed to be afraid of. Good. Let them show their strength. It will make the contrast more impressive. Webb hesitated. Director, are you nervous at all? Tanaka considered the question. No. I stopped being nervous years ago when I accepted that this moment was coming. We have done everything we can. The rest is beyond our control. What if they do not believe us? What if they think the Prometheus is a trick or an illusion? Then we will demonstrate that it is not. The Admiral has authorization to fire a warning shot if necessary. A warning shot? From a ship that size? Just one. Across the bow of the Valorian flagship. Non-lethal, but impossible to ignore. Tanaka straightened her collar. I do not expect it will come to that. When they see her, they will believe. A chime sounded. It was time. Tanaka walked toward the entrance to the main chamber. Webb fell into step behind her. Together, they climbed the stairs toward the light, the moment she emerged onto the floor. The chamber fell silent. The Terran delegation podium was small and modest. positioned at the far edge of the speaking area. It had been assigned to humanity decades ago when they first joined the Concorde as observers. No one had expected them to ever use it for anything important. Tanaka walked to the podium with measured steps. She could feel thousands of eyes upon her, alien senses analyzing her every movement. Some of those eyes were curious. Some were hostile. Some were simply waiting to see what entertainment the doomed humans would provide. At the center of the chamber, on a raised platform that dominated the speaking area, Ambassador Kethvorin sat in his delegation's place of honor. His compound eyes tracked Tanaka's approach. His mandibles moved slightly, a Valorian expression of amusement. The presider, an ancient being of crystalline form that had moderated the assembly for 800 years, chimed for attention. The assembly recognizes the delegation of the Terran Union. Director Yuki Tanaka will address the chamber regarding the matter of Valorian integration. Director, you may speak. Tanaka bowed to the presider. Then she turned to face the assembled species. Honored delegates, she began. I stand before you at a moment of great importance for my people. 3 cycles ago, the Valorian hegemony delivered an ultimatum to the Terran Union. Submit to integration, they said, or face destruction. Join their empire as servants, or be crushed beneath their fleets. She paused, letting the words settle. This is not a new story. Many of you know it well. You have seen species face this choice before. You have watched them calculate the odds, measure their strength against the might of the hegemony, and conclude that resistance is futile. You have watched them kneel. Her gaze swept across the chamber. Today, I bring you a different answer. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Kethvorin's mandibles stopped moving. The Terran Union does not accept the Valorian ultimatum. We do not accept integration. We do not accept servitude. And we do not accept the premise that the strong have the right to subjugate the weak simply because they can. This is foolishness. Kethvorin's voice boomed through the chamber as he rose from his seat. Director Tanaka, you are condemning your species to destruction. Do you understand what you are saying? I understand perfectly, Ambassador. And I am not finished. The presider chimed. Ambassador Kethvorin, the director has the floor. You will have an opportunity to respond. Kethvorin's carapace darkened with anger, but he sat down. His eyes never left Tanaka. The Valorian hegemony believes that might makes right, Tanaka continued. They believe that their 800 systems and their massive fleets give them the authority to dictate terms to younger species. They believe that we are primitives, too weak and too foolish to resist their demands. She smiled. They are wrong. Director, this is pathetic, Kethvorin interrupted again. You have no fleet. You have no allies. You have nothing but words and empty pride. If you wish to die for your arrogance, that is your choice. But do not waste the Assembly's time with fantasy. I assure you, Ambassador, this is no fantasy. Tanaka pulled her cum device from her pocket. The gesture was small, almost casual, but something in it made the chamber go quiet. For 60 years, humanity has prepared for this moment. From the day we received faster-than-light technology, we knew that the hegemony would eventually come for us. We knew that they saw us as servants to be collected, not equals to be respected. And we knew that if we wanted to survive as a free people, we would need to build something the galaxy had never seen. Lies, Kethvorin hissed. We have monitored your every movement. Your shipyards produce civilian vessels. Your military consists of patrol craft. You have nothing. We have exactly what we wanted you to see. Tanaka's voice hardened. Every piece of intelligence you gathered, every report you received, every spy you planted in our space reported exactly what we allowed them to report. You saw our public face. You never saw what was behind it. The murmurs grew louder. Delegates were leaning forward, Sensors focused on the small human at the podium. "What are you saying?" Kethvorin demanded. Tanaka raised the cum device. "I am saying that the Terran Union has not been idle these 60 years. I am saying that we have built something in the darkness, in the spaces between stars, where your surveillance could not reach. And I am saying that the time has come to reveal what we have made." She pressed a button. "Admiral Chun, you may enter the field." For a moment, nothing happened. The chamber was silent, delegates exchanging confused glances. Kethvorin's mandibles clicked with derision. "Is this your response? An empty gesture?" "Director, if you are trying to," he stopped. On the massive display screen that dominated one wall of the chamber, the view of space outside the station flickered. The Valorian escort fleet hung there, 12 heavy cruisers in perfect formation. Behind them, the distant stars glittered peacefully. Then the stars began to dim. It started at the edge of the display, a shadow creeping across the void. The distant lights seemed to fade, as if something vast was blocking them. Sensors across the station started to flash warnings. Energy readings spiked to impossible levels. And then space itself seemed to tear open. Hyperspace emergence of that magnitude should have been impossible. The energy required to open such a portal was beyond anything in known physics. But there it was, a wound in reality large enough to swallow moons. Something was coming through. The first thing visible was light, a burning blue-white radiance that pulsed from within the portal. Then came the shape, a wall of metal that seemed to have no end. It emerged slowly, impossibly slowly, because its size defied comprehension. The delegates watched in stunned silence as the ship revealed itself. 20-3 kilometers of hull, armored plating that could withstand planetary bombardment, weapon systems that covered its surface like scales on a dragon, engine arrays that burned with the fury of captured stars. The UE's Prometheus had arrived. The Valorian escort fleet, which moments ago had seemed so imposing, looked like toys beside her. The largest of their cruisers could have fit inside one of her hangar bays. Her shadow fell across the station itself, and the lights dimmed as her mass disrupted local power systems. Kethvorin stood frozen at his podium. His compound eyes had expanded to their maximum size, a Valorian expression of total shock. His translator device made small clicking sounds as it tried to process words he was not speaking. "That," Tanaka said quietly, "is the Prometheus. She is humanity's first Titan-class vessel. 23 kilometers of answer to every species that has ever tried to tell us what we cannot do." The display showed more shapes emerging from hyperspace behind the Prometheus. Smaller vessels, though that word felt wrong for ships that were each kilometers long. They poured through the portal in perfect formation, one after another, until the space around the station was filled with steel and fire. 12 Colossus-class carriers, Tanaka continued. 40 Warden-class battlecruisers. 218 support vessels. The combined fleet that humanity has spent 60 years building in secret. The chamber had descended into chaos. Delegates were shouting, crying out, scrambling to their feet. Some were trying to contact their home governments. Others were simply staring at the display in disbelief. The presider chimed repeatedly, trying to restore order. Finally, the ancient being's voice cut through the noise. "Silence. The assembly will have order." Slowly, the chamber quieted. But the tension remained, thick enough to taste. Tanaka had not moved from her podium. She stood calm and composed, as if revealing a secret fleet was something she did every day. "I understand your shock," she said. "Believe me, we intended it. For 60 years, we let the galaxy believe we were weak. We accepted the contempt of greater powers. We endured the mockery of those who thought themselves our superiors. And all the while, we built." She turned to face Kethvorin directly. "Ambassador, You asked me if I understood what I was saying when I rejected your ultimatum. I understood perfectly. I was saying that the Terran Union is not a species of servants waiting to be collected. We are a power unto ourselves, and any empire that tries to subjugate us will pay a price in blood and fire that they can barely imagine. Kethvorn found his voice. It was rough, shaken, nothing like the smooth confidence he had shown before. This changes nothing. The hegemony controls 800 systems. We have fleets that dwarf even this. This display. If you force us to war, we will. You will what, Ambassador? Destroy us? Tanaka shook her head. Perhaps you could in time. Perhaps you have the resources to grind us down over decades of conflict. But what would it cost you? How many ships would you lose? How many systems would we strike before you finished us? She gestured at the display. The Prometheus is not just a warship. She is a symbol. And right now, every species in the galaxy is watching. They are seeing that the mighty hegemony was fooled by primitives. They are seeing that a species barely 60 years into the galactic community has produced something that makes your escort fleet look like children's toys. You are threatening us? I am offering you a choice. The same choice you offered us, just reversed. Tanaka's voice was cold now, hard as steel. You can accept the Terran Union as an equal member of the galactic community. You can withdraw your ultimatum and acknowledge that humanity is not yours to command. And in exchange, we will maintain peaceful relations and explore opportunities for mutual benefit. Or we fight. And while you might eventually win, the victory will be hollow. Your other rivals will see your weakness. Your subject species will see their chance. The hegemony has maintained power through the perception of invincibility for thousands of years. We have cracked that perception. Once cracked, it cannot be repaired. The chamber was silent. Every delegate was watching, waiting to see how the hegemony would respond. Kethvorn stood motionless. His mind was racing through possibilities, calculating options. The human was right about one thing. This moment was being watched by everyone. Whatever he did next would shape the hegemony's reputation for generations. If he attacked and succeeded, they would be seen as bullies who crushed a brave upstart. If he attacked and failed, or even if he won at great cost, they would be seen as vulnerable. Either way, the damage was done. This is not over, he said finally. The hegemony will need to consult. This development changes the situation considerably. Take all the time you need, Ambassador. The Prometheus is not going anywhere. Kethvorn turned and strode out of the chamber. His delegation followed, mandibles clicking in confused agitation. The Valorian presence at the assembly had collapsed in minutes. The presider chimed once more. The Valorian delegation has withdrawn. Does the Terran delegation have anything further? Tanaka nodded. Only this. The Terran Union came to this assembly not to threaten, but to demonstrate. We do not seek war. We did not build this fleet to conquer. We built it because the galaxy taught us that the weak are consumed. We refuse to be weak. She looked out at the assembled species. To every delegation watching, to every species that has ever felt small before the great powers of the galaxy, we say this: you are not alone. The Terran Union stands ready to support any species that wishes to remain free. We will oppose any empire that tries to subjugate others through force alone. And we will build a future where might does not make right. She bowed to the presider. Thank you for your time. And with that, she turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the chaos resumed. But it was a different kind of chaos now. Not the panic of confusion, but the excitement of possibility. Delegates were rushing to make contact with the Terran representatives. Alliance offers, trade proposals, and expressions of support flooded the communication channels. The galaxy was changing. Outside the station, the Prometheus hung in the darkness like a sleeping giant. Her weapons were silent, her engines idling. She had made her point without firing a single shot. But if necessary, she was ready. Commander Webb caught up with Tanaka in the corridor. His face was a mixture of relief and amazement. "Director, that was incredible. I have never seen anything like it." "Neither has the galaxy, Commander." "That was rather the point. What happens now?" Tanaka paused at a window. Through the transparent wall, she could see the distant shape of the Prometheus, a dark silhouette against the stars. "Now we wait. The hegemony will need time to process what just happened. They will debate, argue, threaten, and eventually they will accept reality. We are not servants to be collected. We are equals, whether they like it or not. And if they choose war anyway, then we fight." Tanaka's expression was calm, almost peaceful. "But I do not think it will come to that. The hegemony has survived for thousands of years by being practical above all else. They will recognize that subjugating humanity is no longer worth the cost." Webb nodded slowly. "I hope you are right." "So do I, Commander." "So do I." She turned from the window and continued down the corridor. Behind her, the galaxy continued to spin, stars burning in the endless darkness. But for humanity, everything had changed. They were no longer children among the stars. They had announced themselves as players, and the game was only beginning. Admiral James Chun stood on the bridge of the Prometheus and watched the universe change. The bridge was the heart of the great ship, a vast circular chamber located deep within its armored core. Holographic displays covered every surface, showing sensor data, fleet positions, and the faces of officers coordinating 1,000 tasks. Hundreds of crew members worked at their stations with quiet efficiency, the product of decades of training for this single moment. Through the main display, Chun could see Concord Station hanging in space before them. It looked small from here, a toy structure that could fit inside one of his ship's hangar bays. The Valorian escort fleet had pulled back, creating distance between themselves and the Prometheus like frightened animals retreating from a predator. "Admiral," Captain Rodriguez reported from her station. "All systems nominal. The fleet is in formation and holding position. No hostile actions detected from the Valorian vessels." "They will not attack," Chun said. "Not yet. They are still trying to understand what they are looking at." He could not blame them. Even after 20 years of watching the Prometheus take shape, he sometimes struggled to believe what humanity had built. The ship was not just large. It was a statement written in metal and fire, a declaration that humanity refused to be victims of a hostile galaxy. The construction had begun before Chun was even an admiral. In those early days, he had been a junior officer, tasked with overseeing supply convoys to the hidden shipyards. He remembered the first time he saw the skeletal framework of the Prometheus, just a spine of steel floating in the darkness. It had seemed impossible then. It still seemed impossible now. "Message from Director Tanaka, sir," a communications officer announced. "The assembly is in recess. The Valorian delegation has withdrawn to consult with their home government." "Acknowledged. Send the director my compliments and tell her that Phase 1 is complete." "Yes, sir." Chun turned to Rodriguez. "What is the mood of the fleet?" Rodriguez smiled. "Relieved, sir. Excited. For most of these crews, this is the first time they have operated outside of hidden space. They have spent their entire careers training for a battle they were never sure would come. Now they are here, and the galaxy can see them. And the enemy has not fired a shot." "No, sir." "Not yet." Chun nodded. That was the best possible outcome. The Prometheus was powerful, perhaps the most powerful single vessel in the known galaxy. But she was not invincible. The hegemony had resources that humanity could not match. In a prolonged war, numbers would eventually tell. That was why the reveal had to be dramatic. It was not enough to show strength. They had to show overwhelming, terrifying, undeniable strength. They had to make the hegemony believe that attacking humanity would cost more than they could afford. So far, it seemed to be working. "Admiral," Rodriguez said quietly, "permission to speak freely?" "Granted. Do you think they will back down?" "The Valorians, I mean. They have been the dominant power in this region for thousands of years. Walking away from humanity, accepting us as equals, it goes against everything they believe." Chun considered the question. "The Valorians are not fools, Captain. They are arrogant, yes. They are cruel and dominating and convinced of their own superiority. But they have survived for millennia by being practical. They know when a fight is worth the cost. And this fight is not? Would you want to fight us? Would you want to send your fleets against a ship that could shatter planets?" Chun gestured at the displays around them. "The Prometheus is just the beginning. She carries manufacturing facilities that can produce smaller vessels. Our Colossus carriers each hold hundreds of fighters. Our battle cruisers are armed with weapons that make conventional armaments look like children's toys." He turned to face Rodriguez directly. "The hegemony could defeat us, eventually, but it would take years. Decades, perhaps. And during that time, every other power in the galaxy would be watching. The Korthari, the Rethani, all the species that resent Valorian dominance. They would see the hegemony bleeding, weakening, vulnerable. By the time they finished with us, they might face a dozen new enemies. So we are betting that they will choose survival over pride. We are betting that they will do what they have always done: survive." Chun's expression was unreadable. "But we are also prepared for the alternative. If they choose to fight, we will give them a war unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen." On the observation deck of the Prometheus, a different kind of gathering was taking place. Senior officers from across the fleet had assembled to witness the historical moment. They stood in clusters, watching the displays and discussing what came next. Many of them had known each other for decades, bound together by the shared secret of humanity's hidden strength. Commander Elena Vasquez stood near the main window, looking out at the distant shape of Concord Station. She was the Prometheus's chief tactical officer, responsible for coordinating the ship's weapon systems. In theory, she could destroy cities with a single command. In practice, she hoped she would never have to dock. Captain Marcus Stone joined her at the window. He commanded the UES Defiance, one of the Colossus-class carriers, and had known Vasquez since their academy days. "Quite a view," he said. "Not the view I expected to see when I signed up for the Navy. What did you expect?" Vasquez smiled. "I thought I would be patrolling shipping lanes and escorting colony vessels. Maybe fighting pirates if we were lucky. I never imagined this. None of us did." Stone looked out at the gathered fleet. "Do you know what I thought when I first saw the construction plans for the Prometheus? I thought it was a joke. Some officer's fantasy project. That would never be built. And now you are, commanding a carrier that would make that fantasy look modest. The universe has a strange sense of humor." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the stars. "What do you think the Valorians are feeling right now?" Vasquez asked. "Fear, confusion, anger." Stone considered. "Mostly anger, I think. They are not used to being surprised. They have spent thousands of years as the dominant power in this region. Every species they encountered either submitted or was destroyed. And now these humans, these children barely out of their cradle world, have revealed something that threatens everything they believe. They might do something stupid. They might. That is why we are staying at full readiness. But I do not think they will. The Valorians are survivors. They will swallow their pride and accept reality. And if you are wrong? Stone turned to face her. His expression was calm, almost peaceful. If I am wrong, then we fight. And we show the galaxy what humanity can do when our survival is at stake. The reaction across the galaxy was immediate and overwhelming. On worlds thousands of light years away, species that had never met a human watched the recordings with amazement. The images were everywhere, spreading through communication networks faster than any official message could travel. A ship the size of a mountain, emerging from hyperspace to challenge the mighty hegemony. On Valoria Prime, the Hegemony Council met in emergency session. The chamber was filled with shouting, accusations, and demands for explanation. How had the humans hidden this? How had their intelligence services failed so completely? Who was responsible for this disaster? Ambassador Keth Voran stood before them, his carapace pale with stress. The humans are more capable than we believed, he admitted. They have clearly been planning this for decades. Their entire public presence was a deception that you failed to detect. Fleet Commander Zethral accused. You assured us they had nothing. You said they would surrender. I reported what our intelligence indicated. If there were failures, they were in our surveillance systems, not in my analysis. Excuses. The hegemony has been humiliated before the entire galaxy. The Supreme Chancellor, an ancient Valorian whose carapace had turned silver with age, raised one of his 4 hands for silence. Enough. We cannot change what has happened. The question now is what we do next. The chamber quieted. Every eye turned to the Chancellor. The humans have revealed their strength. It is considerable, more considerable than any of us imagined. But it does not change the fundamental truth. We are still the hegemony. We still control 800 systems. We still have fleets that outnumber theirs 1,000 to 1. 3 months had passed the day humanity revealed itself to the galaxy. The Prometheus still held her position near Concord Station, a constant reminder of the new reality that every species now had to accept. She had become a landmark, a destination for ships from across the galaxy that came to see the legend with their own senses. Some came out of curiosity. Some came out of fear. All of them left with a new understanding of what humanity was capable of. Director Yuki Tanaka stood on the observation deck of the station, watching the steady stream of vessels that passed through the region. So much had changed in so little time. The galaxy she had known her entire life, the galaxy of ancient powers and helpless younger species, was transforming before her eyes. The Valorian hegemony had officially withdrawn their integration demand 2 weeks after the assembly. The announcement was careful and diplomatic, framed as a recognition of humanity's development rather than a retreat. But everyone knew the truth. The hegemony had been forced to back down for the first time in thousands of years. The consequences were still rippling outward. Commander Webb entered the observation deck with a datapad. He looked tired but satisfied. The last 3 months had been the busiest of his career, and he had handled every challenge with growing confidence. Director, the final delegation has arrived. The Corthery Collective is ready to sign the Mutual Defense Agreement. Excellent. That makes 17 species in the new alliance. 18, if you count the Mandari refugees. Tanaka smiled. The Mandari were a special case. Their homeworld had been destroyed by the hegemony centuries ago, but survivors had scattered across the galaxy, living as refugees and outcasts. When humanity offered them a place in the new alliance, they had wept with gratitude. Finally, someone was willing to stand up for those who could not stand for themselves. How are the negotiations with the consortium? Productive. Ambassador Celestia is driving a hard bargain, but she is fair. The trade agreement should be finalized by the end of the week. Good. What about the hegemony? Any new developments? Webb's expression sobered. Intelligence reports indicate continued consolidation of their forces. They are pulling back from some of their outer territories, focusing on their core systems. There are also rumors of internal conflict. Some factions want to accept the new reality. Others are pushing for a military response. The war faction? Led by Fleet Commander Zethrol. He believes the hegemony should strike now, before humanity can build more ships and recruit more allies. He argues that every day they wait makes the eventual conflict more costly. Tanaka considered this. And what do our analysts think? They believe Zethrol is dangerous, but unlikely to prevail. The Supreme Chancellor has committed to a diplomatic approach, and most of the Council supports him. Unless something changes dramatically, the hegemony will continue to pursue peaceful coexistence. Unless something changes. Tanaka repeated the words thoughtfully. That is the uncertainty we have to live with, Commander. We have created a new balance of power, but balance is fragile. It can be disrupted by a single event, a single decision, a single act of desperation. Then what do? We prepare. We strengthen our alliances, build our defenses, and stay vigilant. And we hope that the hegemony's practical nature continues to outweigh their wounded pride. Webb nodded. It was not a satisfying answer, but it was an honest one. The galaxy had become a more uncertain place. All they could do was face that uncertainty with open eyes. On board the Prometheus, Admiral Chun was conducting a very different kind of meeting. He had gathered his senior officers in the main conference room. A chamber that could have held 100 people, but today contained only a dozen. These were the people who had built humanity's secret strength, who had spent their lives preparing for a moment that might never come. Now that the moment had come, they had to decide what came next. The construction bays are operational, Captain Rodriguez reported. We have completed the first of the new Warden-class battlecruisers. 2 more will be finished within the month. And the Colossus expansion? On schedule. We should have 4 additional carriers by the end of the year. Chun nodded. This was the true secret of the Prometheus, the detail that no one outside humanity's inner circle knew. She was not just a warship. She was a factory, a mobile shipyard, capable of producing new vessels from raw materials gathered in the depths of space. The hegemony had seen a single fleet. They did not realize that fleet could grow. What about crew training? Chun asked. Commander Vasquez answered. We have been running accelerated programs since the reveal. The initial shock brought a surge of volunteers. Everyone wants to serve on the ships that made the Valorians back down. Quality over quantity, Commander. I do not want crews that are merely enthusiastic. I want crews that are ready for whatever comes next. Understood, sir. We are being selective. The best candidates are being fast-tracked for command positions. Chun leaned back in his chair. Good, because we are not going to stop here. The Prometheus proved that humanity can stand against the great powers. Now we need to show that we can build something better than what came before. Something better? Captain Stone asked. A new order. Not an empire like the hegemony, built on fear and subjugation. An alliance of free species, working together for mutual benefit and protection. Chun's voice was thoughtful. That was always the goal, even before we laid the first plates of the Prometheus. We did not want to replace the hegemony. We wanted to make sure no one would ever need to fear them again. And if the hegemony decides to fight us anyway, then we fight. But we fight for something larger than ourselves. We fight for every species that ever wanted to be free. The officers exchanged glances. They had spent their careers preparing for war. Now they were being asked to prepare for something more difficult. Peace. But they were human. They would find a way. Across the galaxy, the news of humanity's rise continued to spread. On distant worlds, Species that had never encountered a human studied the recordings with fascination. The Prometheus had become a symbol, proof that even the smallest could stand against the mighty if they had the courage and the wisdom to prepare. Some species were inspired. They began their own secret projects, their own hidden preparations. If humanity could do it, why not them? Others were frightened. They saw the chaos that humanity had unleashed and feared what would come next. The old order, for all its cruelty, had been stable. The new order was uncertain, dangerous, unpredictable, and some, like the hegemony, were simply angry. On Valoria Prime, Fleet Commander Zethral stood before the Supreme Chancellor in a private audience chamber. The room was ancient, its walls carved with the names of every fleet commander who had served the hegemony across the millennia. Zethral's name was among them. He had earned it through victory after victory, conquest after conquest. Now he faced the possibility that his legacy would be one of defeat without battle. Chancellor, I must protest this course of action. We are treating the humans as equals when they should be ash and memory. The Chancellor studied him with ancient eyes. Commander, I understand your frustration. The humans have humiliated us. They have exposed our weaknesses and damaged our reputation. But anger is not a strategy. Attack is a strategy. We still have the forces to crush them. The Prometheus is impressive, but it is one ship. Our combined fleets could overwhelm it through sheer numbers. At what cost? How many ships would we lose? How many systems would they strike in retaliation? And while we were occupied with the humans, what would our other rivals do? Zethral's mandibles clicked with frustration. You repeat the same objections. At some point, Chancellor, we must accept that maintaining our position requires sacrifice. We maintained our position for thousands of years without such sacrifices. We did so by being smarter than our enemies, not by throwing lives away in pointless wars. This war would not be pointless. It would restore our authority. Would it? The Chancellor rose and walked to the window. Outside, the capital city stretched to the horizon, a testament to millennia of Valorian civilization. Commander, let me tell you something that the history texts do not record. 500 years ago, we faced a similar situation. A species called the Kethrani developed weapons that could threaten our core worlds. They were few in number, but technologically advanced. I have never heard of the Kethrani. Precisely. We destroyed them. Every world, every station, every ship. We erased them from history. The Chancellor's voice was heavy. It took us 40 years and cost us 300 million lives. And when it was over, we had won nothing but enemies. Every species in the galaxy watched what we did to the Kethrani and swore secretly that they would never let us do the same to them. We are still here. They are not. We are still here, but we are weaker than we were. The Kethrani War exhausted our resources and turned potential allies into potential enemies. We have spent 5 centuries rebuilding what we lost. The Chancellor turned to face Zethral. The humans are not the Kethrani. They are stronger, smarter, and more prepared. A war with them would not take 40 years. It might take centuries. And when it was over, assuming we won, what would be left of the hegemony? Zethral was silent. I understand your desire for revenge, Commander. I share it. But I will not sacrifice the future of our species to satisfy wounded pride. We will adapt to this new reality. We will find other ways to maintain our influence. And we will wait. Wait for what? The Chancellor's compound eyes glittered. Wait for the humans to make a mistake. Wait for their alliances to fracture. Wait for opportunities that will inevitably arise. We have existed for millennia, Commander. We can be patient. It was not the answer Zethral wanted, but it was the answer he received. He bowed and left the chamber, his carapace dark with suppressed anger. The Chancellor watched him go, then turned back to the window. Patience was wisdom. But patience had limits. And somewhere in the darkness of the hegemony's future, a reckoning was waiting. Back at Concord Station, Director Tanaka was preparing for the most important ceremony of her career. The Grand Chamber had been transformed for the occasion. Banners representing 17 species hung from the walls, their colors bright against the ancient black stone. Delegations filled the seats, buzzing with anticipation. Today, the Terran Alliance would be officially founded. Tanaka stood at the central podium, looking out at the assembled representatives. There were familiar faces among them. Ambassador Celestia of the Rathani, who had been one of the first to offer support. The Core 3 network nodes, glowing softly in their containment fields. The Mandari survivors, their tentacles waving with emotion, and there were others. Species she had never met before the reveal, who had seen humanity stand and decided to join something larger than themselves. Admiral Chun watched from the side of the chamber, along with a delegation of officers from the fleet. The Prometheus was visible through the window behind him, a constant presence that reminded everyone why they were here. The presider chimed for attention. The assembly recognizes Director Yuki Tanaka of the Terran Union. Director, you may proceed. Tanaka took a deep breath. Distinguished delegates, representatives of free species across the galaxy, we gather today to create something new. Not an empire built on conquest, but an alliance built on choice. Not a hierarchy of strong over weak, but a partnership of equals. She looked around the chamber. For millennia, the galaxy has been ruled by fear. The great powers have treated younger species as resources to be exploited or threats to be eliminated. They have told us that this is the natural order, that might makes right, that the strong will always dominate the weak. Her voice hardened. We reject that order. We reject the idea that power gives anyone the right to subjugate others. We reject the notion that the only options are submission or destruction. She gestured toward the window, toward the distant shape of the Prometheus. Humanity built that ship because we refused to accept the future that others tried to impose on us. We spent 60 years in secret, working and sacrificing and preparing, because we believed that a different future was possible. Today, we begin building that future. She activated a holographic display. A document appeared, written in a dozen languages, bearing the symbols of 17 species. The Charter of the Terran Alliance, a covenant between free peoples, promising mutual defense, shared prosperity, and collective security. Any species that signs this charter becomes part of something larger than themselves. They gain allies who will stand with them against aggression. They gain partners who will share knowledge and resources. And they gain a voice in shaping the future of the galaxy. Tanaka paused, letting the words sink in. I will not pretend that this alliance will solve all our problems. We will face challenges, disagreements, and dangers that we cannot predict. The old powers will not simply accept our existence. They will test us, probe for weaknesses, try to divide us. But we will face those challenges together, united. And when history looks back on this moment, they will see the beginning of a new era. An era when species of all sizes and all origins stood side by side and said, no more. No more fear. No more submission. No more accepting cruelty as the price of survival. She raised her hand. Who stands with humanity today? One by one, the delegations rose. The Rithani, the Core 3, the Mandari, species from across the galaxy, standing together for the first time. And outside the window, the Prometheus burned like a star, a guardian watching over the birth of something new. 3 months later, Director Tanaka received an intelligence report that troubled her. She was in her quarters on the station. reviewing the endless stream of information that came with leading an interstellar alliance. Most of it was routine. Trade agreements, diplomatic disputes, resource allocations. The work of civilization. But this report was different. Commander Webb had brought it personally, his face grave. "Our agents in hegemony space have picked up something strange," he said. "Deep scans of the Valorian shipyards. They are building something." Tanaka set down her data pad. "They are always building something. Not like this. The energy signatures are enormous. The construction bays have been expanded. Security has been increased tenfold. And our sources report that the project has a code name." "What code name?" Webb hesitated. "They are calling it Response." Tanaka felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "They are building their own Titan." "It appears so. Our analysts estimate it will take them at least 10 years to complete, maybe more. They are starting from scratch, and they do not have our head start. But they have more resources, more shipyards, more everything." "Yes." Tanaka rose and walked to the window. The Prometheus was still there, still standing guard. She looked at the great ship and thought about what was coming. 10 years, she said softly. "That is how long we have to prepare for the next phase. Director, if the hegemony builds their own Titan-class vessel, then we need to build more. And faster." Tanaka's voice was calm, but her mind was already racing. "Contact Admiral Chun. Tell him that the Prometheus construction bays are to begin accelerated production immediately. Every resource we have goes into expanding the fleet." "Yes, Director." Webb turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Director, do you think it will ever end? The building, the preparing, the waiting for the next threat." Tanaka considered the question. "I do not know, Commander. Perhaps not in our lifetimes. Perhaps never. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and we are still young. We have decades, centuries, perhaps millennia of challenges ahead of us. That seems exhausting." Tanaka smiled. "It is, but it is also who we are. Humanity has always faced challenges. We have always had enemies and obstacles and impossible odds. And we have always found a way to overcome them." She turned to face him. "We will not survive because we are the strongest or the oldest or the most numerous. We will survive because we never stop. We never give up. We never accept that the future is written by anyone but us." "And the hegemony? Their response project? Let them build their ship. Let them spend a decade creating their answer to the Prometheus. By the time they finish, we will have an entire fleet of Titans. And we will have allies who stand with us." Her expression hardened. "They wanted to make us kneel. They wanted to turn us into servants and erase everything that made us human. Instead, they taught us a valuable lesson. The only way to be safe in this galaxy is to be too dangerous to attack." She looked out at the stars, at the endless darkness that held so many threats and so many possibilities. "They wanted to make an example of us. Instead, we became something else." "What?" Tanaka smiled. It was not a soft smile. It was the smile of someone who had looked into the abyss and found a way to fight back. "We became the example. The proof that even the smallest can stand against the greatest. The hope that every oppressed species in the galaxy can look at and know that a different future is possible." She turned from the window. "That is our victory, Commander. Not just survival. Not just safety. Hope. We gave the galaxy something to believe in." And outside, in the endless dark, the Prometheus stood her silent watch. The first Titan dot, but not the last. Humanity had taken its place among the stars. They had faced the greatest power in the galaxy and refused to kneel. They had built an alliance of free species and created a new vision for the future. It was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and the challenges were endless. There would be wars and cry-sand moments when everything seemed lost. There would be sacrifices and struggles and costs that no one could predict, but humanity would